Hi, it's Greg Hurrell here, and I want to give a quick update on the status of the channel and my plans for it in the future. So let's talk about the purpose of the channel. I've been doing it for about 4 years now. If we look at the playlist up on YouTube, I've got 90 videos so far that I've published, starting back in May 2016, so that's 4 years ago. Almost all of them are on Vim. There's a few that aren't, but mostly Vim. And if you go all the way back there to that very first screencast and listen to me describe the purpose of the channel, nothing has really changed since then. Back then I said that I was making the content for someone like me. In other words, someone with Vim experience who wants to sharpen their axe, wants to learn new things, but I wasn't really looking to do any kind of beginner content, and I wasn't looking to do the kind of marketing content that was popular at the time of basically telling people about the epiphany you have when you start using a modal editor like Vim and why you should use it and why you should be excited. I wanted to say things that other people generally weren't saying, and things that I personally would find interesting. And nothing's really changed. Even 4 years later, I've been using Vim for a long time now, but I still learn things almost daily. So there's always something new and interesting for me to say in one of these screencasts. And that continues to be my core mission here. I'm not looking to get 1 million subscribers. I'm not looking to cover material that other people are already covering. I just want to say stuff that's interesting to me. Some things have changed though. My intentions haven't changed, but the kind of Vim content you find on YouTube has changed a bit. So whereas in the old days, I would look around and I'd see people doing things like convincing other people why Vim is wonderful. Whereas nowadays I see people doing things like showing you how to install plugins and showing you how to turn Vim into something that looks like VS Code. Now, while that's valuable, it's not interesting to me. So I'm going to continue to look for the kind of stuff that I would find interesting, the kind of niche stuff. However, there is a problem with the content that I've got in the channel, and that is that some of it is now quite out of date. And so that brings me to this next bullet point, that what I would like to do is start updating some of this old content. And because you can't upload a new video in YouTube to replace an old video, your only real option is to append a new item to the list. So for example, if I want to talk about folding again, I'm going to make a new screencast. So that's the first part of my plan. I want to revisit some of these topics so that they reflect my current understanding of the state of the art. And I'm going to be publishing new screencasts. In a way, I'm kind of breaking my policy of saying something new that's not been said before, because when I, for example, talk about folding again, there are going to be some things that I repeat that were in the original screencast. I'm just going to give an updated version of it. So that's one of the ideas. The other idea that I would like to start doing soon is I want to start doing what I would call periodic updates. So these are for things that usually reflect something that's happened recently. So let's take an example of that. The very last screencast that I published was about capturing command line output. And within a day or two of publishing that, I had interactions with people online, in the comments, on Twitter, that made me realize that there's some content I would really love to have included in that video. So obviously I'm not going to re-record episode 90 now, like days after recording it, but it might be interesting to be able to say, here's some updates to the stuff that I've been saying over the last few weeks. So I want to start doing what I would call these periodic update threads, where I do things like update the content in that screencast, or at least add to it. So concretely, as an example of the kind of thing I'm talking about, I'm going to open Vim. That screencast was about capturing command line output. And what I really should have included in my list of techniques was a very direct way of getting the stuff into the buffer. So the example that I gave in that screencast was capturing the output of the highlight command, which can usually span multiple pages. And so the technique that I would have liked to show in that is this one here, where you use put to put something into the buffer. You use the equals sign there to effectively evaluate an expression and use that as the source of the lines to be put into the buffer. And then we use the execute function to capture the output of a command. So that puts it straight in there without going through an intermediate file, without having to explicitly manipulate registers or variables. And I think it's a nice way to get output into a buffer. And that's the kind of thing that you might want to put into a custom command or even a mapping. So that's an example of the kind of little tidbit that I would like to include in one of these periodic updates. Another example would be a few weeks ago, I was talking about the Git pager, and I showed you a script that I'd made to make working with Git output in the pager a little more convenient. And so that script, the purpose of it was that you'd be able to hit N as soon as you land in the pager and it would jump you between commits. Now, since making that screencast, I have dramatically simplified the script that I showed. It's now only 36 lines long. And the reason why it's changed is because at the time I made the screencast, I had iterated through various steps to produce a script, fixing issues along the way. And it was only a day or two after I made the screencast that I realized that with a couple more steps, a lot of that previous iteration that I'd done no longer served any purpose and I could just delete it. And so I'll give you a link to this. So if you want to watch that screencast and then see where I ended up weeks later, this is it. So basically, my other idea is to make these periodic update videos to cover those loose ends that occasionally pop up. And the last thing I want to talk about is my personal circumstances at the moment. It's coronavirus time. And so for me, what that means is I've been confined to my house more or less all the time for a couple of months now with a family that includes 2 small children. And so when I record these screencasts, I can't do it during the day because it would be too noisy, as in the environment in which I'm recording would be too noisy. And so that means I have to do it at night. And a couple of the consequences of that are, first of all, I'm generally incredibly tired when I do it. Another is I have to speak quietly. I generally don't have any time to think about what I'm doing beforehand. I just do one take and it's usually pretty rough. And so that's meant that some of the content I've produced lately hasn't met the standards that I wish it would meet. And I'm hopeful that when things get back to normal, I'll be able to record, during the day again and make content that's a little bit more polished. So that's really just kind of an aspirational thing. And I guess the last thing that I want to say is I hate dark mode UIs, but I've set YouTube to dark mode because I don't want the screen to throw a bunch of white light in my face when I'm looking at it, which will make me look funny in the camera. So that's why I'm using dark mode. But there's no legitimate reason to use dark mode, okay? Unless you're in Vim itself, where dark mode is cool. Okay, so that's all I got on the channel update. So thanks for bearing with me over 90 episodes in 4 years, and I'll see you again soon.